Imagine standing on a sun-drenched tarmac, your eyes locked on a sleek, vintage aircraft that seems to defy the laws of economics. It is a Beechcraft Bonanza, the legendary V-tail, or perhaps a classic Piper Cherokee, and the price tag is a staggering $50,000. In a world where a new luxury SUV costs more than a used airplane, this feels like the ultimate bargain, a golden ticket to the skies for the price of a mid-sized sedan. But as you reach for your checkbook, a seasoned mechanic stands in the shadows, shaking his head. He knows what the glossy paint and the fresh annual sign are hiding. He knows that in the world of general aviation, the most expensive airplane you will ever own is the one you bought for a bargain. This isn't just about high maintenance costs or expensive fuel. This is about a structural terminal illness that turns a beautiful dream into a high-altitude death trap. The $50,000 airplane is a siren song, luring unsuspecting buyers into a financial and physical catastrophe that often ends in a visually inaccessible area of the lower main wing spar cap or a catastrophic rudder vader flutter. To understand why these bargains are so dangerous, we have to look at the cold, hard data of structural fatigue and the history of general aviation design. Take the Beechcraft Bonanza Model 35, the iconic V-tail. For decades, it was the gold standard of high-performance personal aircraft, a doctor killer, not because it was inherently poorly designed, but because it was so fast and capable that it tempted pilots into conditions they couldn't handle. However, the real danger in 2026 isn't just pilot error, it's the aging airframe. The V-tail design, while aerodynamically efficient, places unique stresses on the rear fuselage. Specifically, the rudder vaders, the combined rudder and elevator surfaces, are prone to a phenomenon known as flutter. If the balance of these surfaces is off by even a few grams, or if the control cable tension has slackened over 40 years of use, the tail can begin to vibrate at high speeds. This isn't a gentle shaking. It is a violent, self-reinforcing oscillation that can literally rip the tail off the airplane in seconds. When you see a V-tail for $50,000, you aren't just buying a plane. You are likely buying an airframe that is nearing its structural limit, where the cost of a proper rudder vader reskin and balance, essential for preventing flutter, can easily exceed $20,000. Most bargain sellers skip this critical maintenance, leaving the new owner flying a ticking time bomb. Then there is the silent killer of the Piper PA-28 and PA-32 series, the wing spar. In 2020, the FAA issued Airworthiness Directive 2020-26-16, a regulatory kill shot for thousands of older Pipers. This directive was prompted by a horrifying accident where a wing literally separated from a Piper Arrow in flight due to fatigue cracking that was completely invisible from the outside. The problem is located in the wing spar attachment bolts, a high-stress area that requires specialized eddy current inspections to detect microscopic cracks. For a $50,000 Cherokee, this inspection is the ultimate gamble. If the inspector finds even a hairline fracture, the airplane is legally grounded forever. The cost of replacing a wing spar is so astronomical, often exceeding $60,000 in labor and parts, that it effectively totals the aircraft. Sellers know this. They know their aging airframe is approaching the high-risk hour threshold, and they are looking for a smart buyer to take the liability off their hands before the next mandatory inspection. You think you're buying a weekend flyer. The seller knows they're offloading a structural total loss. The danger of the $50,000 bargain extends into the engine compartment, where the math of time since major overhaul, or TSMO, becomes a trap for the unwary. A Continental or Lycoming engine in a high-performance plane has a recommended time between overhauls of around 2,000 hours. As an engine approaches this limit, its value drops precipitously. An engine with 1,800 hours since its last overhaul is effectively a liability, not an asset. A professional overhaul on a six-cylinder engine in 2026 can easily cost $40,000 to $50,000, the entire purchase price of the bargain plane. Many buyers assume they can just fly it past TBO if the compressions are good, but internal corrosion, lifter spalling, and crankshaft fatigue don't care about your compression readings. Buying a cheap plane with a high-time engine is essentially a $50,000 down payment on a $100,000 engine replacement. When the engine fails in flight, it isn't just a financial disaster. It's a life-threatening emergency that most amateur pilots are ill-equipped to handle in a high-performance airframe. But perhaps the most insidious part of the death trap bargain is the deferred maintenance culture that plagues the bottom end of the market. When an airplane is worth only $50,000, the owner is psychologically disincentivized to perform $5,000 repairs. Why spend 10% of the plane's value on a new set of fuel bladders or a modern digital ignition system? The result is a slow, cascading failure of secondary systems. Old rubber hoses that carry high-pressure fuel become brittle and prone to leaking. Vacuum pumps that power critical flight instruments are run until they shear. Wiring harnesses from the 1960s become frayed, creating a constant fire risk behind the instrument panel. These aren't the things that show up in a standard pre-buy inspection unless you pay a specialist hundreds of extra dollars to look for them. The bargain buyer, trying to save money, usually skips the expensive inspection, unknowingly stepping into a cockpit where half the critical safety systems are one flight away from failure. The psychological toll of owning a death trap bargain is the final, hidden cost. You start your ownership journey with excitement, but it quickly turns to dread. Every weird vibration, every flicker of an oil pressure gauge, every strange smell in the cabin becomes a source of intense anxiety. You realize that you can't afford to fix the plane properly, so you start taking calculated risks. You fly only in perfect weather, you avoid long trips over mountains, and you stop taking your family with you because, deep down, you don't trust the machine. The freedom of flight is replaced by the prison of an unsafe asset. Eventually, the plane sits idle in a hangar, its value plummeting further as seals dry out and corrosion takes hold in the engine cylinders. You become the next seller, looking for the next smart buyer to buy your $50,000 mistake. In 2026, the reality of general aviation is that there is no such thing as a cheap, safe, high-performance airplane. The materials have an expiration date, the regulations are getting tighter, and the cost of skilled labor is rising. When you see a plane for $50,000 that should be worth $100,000, the market is telling you something. It is telling you that the structural integrity is compromised, the engine is a liability, or the regulatory burden is about to ground the fleet. The smart money isn't buying the bargain. It's paying the premium for a documented, well-maintained airframe with a low-time engine and a clean spar inspection. They understand that in the air, you don't pay for the plane you want. You pay for the peace of mind that comes from knowing your wings won't fold and your engine won't quit. Don't let the siren song of a cheap price tag lead you into a death trap, because at 10,000 feet, the only thing more expensive than a good airplane is a cheap one. If you found this technical breakdown of the bargain market helpful, make sure to subscribe and check out our next deep dive into the specific models that are currently flooding the market at these dangerous price points. Share your own bargain horror stories in the comments below. Your experience might just save a fellow pilot's life. Until next time, keep your inspections thorough and your altitude high.